Welcome, Richard, to Metaladium website. It's a pleasure for us to have this interview with you. So for that, thank you very much for this opportunity to talk with you. First of all, how are you? How has the band been during the last couple of crazy years? Pandemic, war?
Yeah, I'd say we've been waiting. I think it's probably the best answer. We wrote our new album back in 2020, and then we recorded it in 21. So this year we're just waiting for it to come out. So November the 18th, it'll finally come out. We're very excited about that, and just looking forward to getting back to normal next year. Hopefully, back out on the road, new album out, life back how it used to be. That's what I'm hoping for.
Great. It has been 5 years since the release of The Legends of the Shires. When do you begin to work on this new album, Dividing Lines?
Really, it was 2020 we started. Carl Groom, the guitarist, sent me his first 3 demos over the summer in 2020. So I started writing lyrics and melodies for those, and then I started writing some songs of my own. And then Glyn, our singer, presented 3 songs as well. So by Christmas, we pretty much had most of the album written. And then we spent most of 2021 recording it. It took quite a while because of COVID and lockdowns, so we couldn't get in the studio. So everything just took a long time. But really, we didn't start writing till 2020 because we were just enjoying touring so much. We had a great first tour of Europe, and then that led to another tour of Europe, playing the whole album, which was fun. And then just going all over the world. I think we went to about 20 countries, which was fantastic. And it was such a strange thing where that just suddenly came to a complete stop with COVID. And we're just waiting to get out there again. Can't wait for the world to start.
Okay. So what can we expect in terms of sound and lyrics compared to the previous album?
Sorry, can you say that again?
What can we expect in terms of sound and lyrics compared to the previous album?
Oh, okay. It's more compact. It's a shorter album. I'm not sure if it's about 60 minutes, something like that. Whereas Legends was a very long album. That was 80 minutes. We spread that over 2 CDs, and it filled up 2 vinyls. So a bit more compact, a bit more focused, probably a bit darker on the lyrics. I think it's more a collection of cautionary tales. I think there's lots of just looking at the darker aspects of life. I think really just because of what we've been through recently, it feels like the world's changed a bit. And so we're just reflecting more on the sign of the times. But I think there is some light in there. I think there's kind of a redemption message too about staying true to yourself and not getting tangled up in what's going on in the world. But I think, a lot of records coming out at the moment have got a bit more darkness to them because we've just been through something really weird.
Okay. So every record is special for a band, especially because it reflects a specific moment in band's careers. So what does Dividing Lines mean in Threshold's career? Most bands consider their last album is their best album. So do you consider Divided Lines as your best album to date?
In some ways, yeah. It's our most professional sounding. I feel with every album we make, we learn more, and we put that back into the record. So we get better at this every time. You listen back to some of our early albums like Psychedelicatessen or Extinct Instinct, you can hear we were young, we were experimenting, we were just, trying weird ideas out, and some of them worked and some of them maybe didn't. I think you lose some of that as you go on. You know what you're doing. Is it our best album? I think having done 12, it's kind of pompous to say that because I know I look back on our career and I just love some of the records we made. I look back at Hypothetical and Subsurface, Dead Reckoning, For the Journey as some of the highlights. There's just such a great catalogue. I'm so proud to be part of it. So I'm hoping this one's up there with them, but I wouldn't want to say it's definitely the best because I just love what we've made, And Legends, of course. Legends. A lot of fans said to us, so you're making a new album then, but you're not going to top Legends, they said. So I hope we have. It's a different sort of record. We didn't try and make another Legend. We tried to make something slightly different, and I think it's come out really well. Really excited about it.
Yeah, so into this aspect, bands like people can evolve and can change through the years. It's normally that happen. So how do you feel about releasing this album compared to the times when you released your first album? Did the way you compose and record music change much?
I think I remember releasing Wounded Land, and I think because I was more of a session player on that record,
Mm.
it didn't bother me so much. I wasn't really worried what the reviews said. I didn't feel that connected. I think because I hadn't written it, I hadn't produced it. I just played a few keyboards. But then when we started bringing out records, the second, third, fourth, you're so nervous when the reviews come out. Like everything rests on what the reviewers say and what the fans say. And we've just been really lucky. We've somehow we just nearly always seem to get great reviews, which is really cool. But that little nervous edge never goes away. So even with Dividing Lines, I've only seen one review so far, and it was one from the UK, and it was really good. So I'm excited so far. But you just don't know. You don't know what people are going to say. Are they going to get tired of us? Have we taken a bad step? So there's always that little nervous. You feel like a little boy still, just hoping that everything is going to be okay. But I have to say, I'm quietly confident. I think we've made a good one.
Okay. Well, as you said, as you mentioned a little things about and related with your this new dividing lines is your best word to date. So, but I think the fans thinks differently because the fans thinks that the previous words or the first three or the first four are the best words from their career, especially from the bands like Threshold, or perhaps you think like this because you have influence from metal, rock, jazz, blues, and you think your best influence has the best words just the first two albums, one album, and then you don't listen anymore from these bands or new albums. So for that, what's your opinion about the fans things like this? Just the first three, just the first four, just the first two, or perhaps the first one are the best word to threshold to now?
Well, we have a bigger problem because we keep changing singers, which isn't something we mean to do. And I think when a band changes singers, it's very difficult to keep your fans because you get used to a certain sound, don't you, with a certain voice. But I think whereas I think when we changed from Damien to Glyn for Legend, I think we probably lost a few Damien fans. But then a lot of fans came back that preferred the sound of Glyn and Mac, who had a similar voice. So I think we won a lot of fans back at the same time. But it seems progressive metal is one of those genres where fans are very loyal, and we've had fans from the beginning, and we play live shows now, and you see the same fans from 20, 30 years ago, and now they're bringing their children with them, and it's like becomes a family thing. So in some ways it feels like it's our responsibility not to lose the fans. If we put out a really bad record, then we're going to lose people. But as long as we keep on doing our best and making hopefully great records, I feel the fans just stay with us. They grow old with us. Our songs become part of their soundtrack. We get to know them on social media and at shows. We meet them after the shows, sign things for them, get to know them, and it becomes this really nice family. And you see it especially with festivals. When we go to festivals like 70,000 Tons of Metal or Prog Power, it's a family of people, and they go and it's like a pilgrimage. They go there every year, whichever bands are on, and it's just really nice to be part of that.
Okay. Well, the album's all in threshold shows the album shows a cool cover art. So what can you tell about it? How do you choose the art from an album? In addition of this one, so nowadays artificial intelligence is getting accessible for most people. You can write a detailed description, and the software will create an image based on that. So, do you think this will impact in the near future the music industry? I mean, have you ever thought about using it to create your cover art for example, the next album?
No, I never thought of that, but that sounds like a wonderful idea because I have to say, finding the last few album covers, I think probably the last three, has been really tough. Because instead of just going to an artist and commissioning something, we've just decided to search the internet for cool artists and find something good. And after weeks and weeks and weeks, it's soul destroying. There's some great artists out there, but you get really fussy and you think, well, it has to look just like a Threshold record. And that's just what we did for Dividing Lines. We knew it had to show a sort of depiction of division, obviously. So you get this division on this cover, you get the wasteland below, and then you get this kind of alien sort of landscape where it feels like it's quite detached. So there's this dividing line. And it looked like a threshold record, which was important. But yeah, it took us weeks. It was a horrible process. So doing it with AI next time sounds like a fantastic idea. If you've got any links, send them my way.
Okay. Well, talking about this aspect of artificial intelligence, as I mentioned as well, now the software is called for the art is DALL-E, and a lot of programs more exist with this creating with artificial intelligence. But with this, the artificial intelligence is more present into the music too, because as you can see in YouTube, in the YouTube channels, or perhaps around the world on social media, you can see drum machines, bass machines, vocalists with iTunes, just software. No one sings, just software. So etc. etc. A lot of musicians are using now the artificial intelligence to create new music. So what is your opinion about the artificial intelligence more present into the arts, especially into the music, art in general? And how do you see now the future with the music? Perhaps in the future, will you listen a band just create just for machines?
I doubt it. I think art comes from the human soul, and it's the expression of the human soul. And sure, computers can do a great job, but that's not what we're in art for. That's not what we're in music for. I'd certainly never contemplate making music that way. It might work for other people because it's maybe part of their artistic process. But I'm a composer. I just love to write music, and it's what I do every day. I do it in my head. I do it in my sleep. I do it in the shower. I do it in the car. I just love making music, and I don't want a computer to do that for me. No thanks.
Okay. Talking about other aspects, the singles you release like Silence sound great. It's a very important nowadays because like it or not, many people focus more on singles, especially young people, because I grew up listening and enjoying the journey that the complete albums offers. So how do you choose your singles? Does it reflect the overall sound of the album?
I guess to a degree, it's not a simple answer. I certainly with Legends of the Shires, we picked the obvious single, which was just the opening song, Small Dark Lines, or nearly the opening song. And then the video wasn't ready in time, so we had to pick another single. So we ended up picking the 10-minute track, Lost in Translation. So it's really not a sensible single, but it was a good comeback statement. I think with the new album, Dividing Lines, there were more obvious singles on there. There were a few songs that were a good 4, 5, 6 minute length, so they were a bit more sensible. But I wouldn't say any of them represent the sound of the album, in one song. I think we have different aspects, and you get to hear a different flavor of each. I think what was cool with it, the album's written by 3 of us, so me, Carl the guitarist, and Lynn the singer, and each song, each of the 3 singles is by each of the 3 of us, so you get to see each of the 3 flavors a little bit. So that probably helped to give a balance of what the album sounds like. But it's been interesting. I've seen a few fans saying, I won't listen to the singles. I want to wait for the record because I want to hear it in its entirety. And I think I'm one of those guys. I kind of like it when you buy a new record. It's a special occasion. You put it on for the first time and everything's new. But I think because of the way it works now, with it takes 9 months just to press vinyl because there's so many queues in the vinyl factories. You have to do something. So you put out the singles, you build up the pre-orders. It's a great campaign for the record label. So I understand why they do it. But I know some of our fans haven't heard the singles yet. And that's good for them. That takes a bit of willpower. It's like not having a chocolate till Christmas, isn't
it? Okay. And to one, in addition to with this question, as you mentioned and I mentioned too, so the younger generation here now, the just singles, we're returning to the 40s and 50s when the music just is spread by singles. And now this new generation don't wanna listen the whole album. So for you, what perhaps do you have a solution to encourage or to improve or to motivate the listeners to listen the whole album?
That's difficult, isn't it? I think when I was growing up, it was such a major part of your life was going to the record shops, browsing through them, buying the new album when it came out. It was a big part of what you did. You'd just sit there with the record player in front of you and just listen. Even I struggle to do that now. After 3 minutes, you're thinking, oh, I'll check my messages, or, there's always some distraction. But I think on the one hand, we've seen our fans grow up with us. When we started, you're 20, 25 years old, whatever. and you think I'll do this for 10 years, but then I'll be too old for rock and roll, and then here we are 30 years on, and you realize you never get too old for it because it's in your blood, and the fans got old with us. So yeah, they're all still there, they're all still listening to albums. Am I worried about whether a 20-year-old listens to us? I don't know. They've got a different life, they've got different distractions. It's great if they find us, but they're going to be more likely to be listening on Spotify or catching a video on YouTube. I think there's slightly different listening habits now for people, but I kind of hope either way they'll come to the show, and maybe by coming to the show they'll hear a whole album, and maybe that will encourage them to buy an album. But I don't mind. I just want people to be happy. They don't have to all go and buy the record.
Okay. Well, into this aspect, as you saw that this new album Divided Lines was for me too. When I listened whole completely album, I denote a lot of flavors, I note a lot of texture, a lot of layers. It's normal because your music is progressive metal into this aspect. And relating to this, so perhaps you hear about the synesthesia mother.
Hear about the what? Sorry.
Synesthesia. Okay, if you don't know about the word, I will explain you. The synesthesia mother is when a person listens to music and they see colors, they smell.
Oh, sorry, yes, yeah.
They smell smells, they'll taste. A lot of things happen with these covers. So as you are a progressive metal man with a lot of textures, layers, especially into this Divine Lines, there's a great album by the way. So for you, what kind of odors, taste, and colors that the listeners will find into these Dividing Lines?
Wow, I would love to be able to see colors from music. That sounds like an amazing thing, like a special privilege that some people have. I don't have that, so I don't know what our music looks like. I don't know what it smells like. I can only tell you what it sounds like. But I find there's a real privilege in writing progressive metal because if you're writing pop music, you've got a 3-minute format, you've got 4 chords, you've got repeating melodies. When you're writing prog metal, there's just this palette is just so much wider. So I don't know what these guys can see, but for me, I see so many colors that I can use in my palette when I'm painting this way. We can go really heavy, we can go really long, we can go progressive, we can go for interesting time signatures, we can put in long instrumental passages, you can do big vocal moments. There's just so much room to do all this stuff, and I just adore it. So I'm kind of hoping we paint a whole palette of colors, but it's certainly something I'd love to be able to see. Maybe somebody one day could paint what they see when they listen to us.
Okay. So talk about this album. What are your plans after releasing the album? What are the music industry or the rock metal scene in your country now? Now the pandemic situation far better, no? Now perhaps a European tour, perhaps a North American tour, or who knows, in the next future a Latin American tour.
Oh, we'd love to. We've wanted to do that for so long. What we always tend to do is we do a European tour. We'll do 1 or 2 UK shows as part of that. And then everyone will write to us telling us we have to go and play in their country too. So we would love to play the whole world. We were really lucky actually with Legends of the Shires. We found we were going to new countries we hadn't been to before. So the world was just, ironically then, it was just starting to open up for us more. We were just due to go actually to Australia and do a tour just before COVID happened. And that would have been our first time there in 30 years. I'm just really hoping next year the world goes back to normal. We don't know what's going to happen, but we were so enjoying just touring more and more up until 2019. So I just, really hope that starts again next year. South America, bring it on. I'd love to. I know we got loads of fans all across the continent. We'd love to come down there.
Okay. Talking about all, as I said in the previous question, and talking about other aspects of the music, sometimes when people hear the word progressive, they think about long songs with never-ending instrumental parts, and these demonstrations of how skillful a musician can be, especially. So, in this case of Threshold, there is a great balance between melodies, emotions, and heavy parts, especially for this, talking about this new album. So, how can you achieve this balance?
I think there's room in the music to have those extended instrumentals, and we do that. And as you know, there's a couple of long songs on the new album, and I think it's an important part of what we do. It's part of that palette I was talking about. But I think really Threshold generally, we're fairly introverted, and that probably means we're not there trying to show off. We're not the guys that want to stand at the front and say, "Hey, look at me, I'm really fast." maybe we were like that when we were 20, but I think maybe we're a bit older now. But it's really, the important thing has always been the song for us, you know, the melody and the lyrics. That's always been the top thing. You know, if you've got a great song, you can do it in prog metal style, you can do an acoustic version, it still sounds great, but you've got to have a good song in the first place. That's always been our focus. I know other bands have different focuses and it works for them, but for us, the song first and then the fingers second.
Okay. So furthermore, do you still have time to listen to new bands? Rock, metal is still evolving and changing. In case of progressive, there are no limits for young bands when they have to mix different genres with progressive. How do you see how do you see the scene nowadays from your perspective?
I'll be honest, I really don't listen to that much new music. I have a vague listen to see what's going on. I try and check out the new music every week, but I don't tend to buy much of it. I don't know what it is. Something about me, I'm very nostalgic for the 70s and the 80s, and I spend most of my time listening to that. And it's very hard for new music to catch my ear in the same way because there's all this nostalgia with the old stuff. In fact, I had a guy asking me the other day, what are your favorite albums? And they were all 70s, 80s albums. I couldn't think of any new ones that had stayed with me. There's some amazing bands doing some amazing records, but they just don't resonate with me in the same way. You can't beat nostalgia, they say. And I think that's what it is. So for me, it's Queen, it's Pink Floyd, it's Genesis, you know. So you can ask me about new music, but I'm the worst person to ask. You would have a much better answer than me.
Okay. So being a band that began in the late 80s makes you experience all the huge changes that the music industry has through the years. So do you like the way it works nowadays? It's easier to form or have a band nowadays compared to the 80s or 90s, for example?
I think obviously there's a lot more connection with the internet. So it's easier to hook up with other people, and it's easier in theory to contact the labels. It's not, you know, back in the 80s, you'd put a CD in an envelope and put it in the post and just hope somebody was going to listen to it, and you never heard anything again. Now you can find somebody on the internet, or you can get to know them at shows or whatever, and actually get to know them before you send them your music, and that really helps because you've got that relationship there. Funnily enough, I've just announced today that I've signed a new band that I've put together, and we just signed with a label called Atomic Fire. And I don't think I could have done that 20 years ago. I think my guitarist is Rick Jolly from Within Temptation. The drummer is Darby Todd from Devin Townsend. Our bass player is Simon Anderson from Darkwater. Everyone in different countries, and it's just you know that would have been impossible back then. So there's great opportunities, and then we signed to a German label because I know the guys, and it feels like things are easier. But I think there's always going to be 10,000 projects that you try that don't get signed. You know, there's still that real potluck thing going on. But it must be tough for a new band because, you know, there's not so much money in music now, especially for young music, because from streaming, it just doesn't generate the same sort of income, you know, unless you're right at the top, in the top 50 or something. So I think it must be really hard for a new band starting out. I'm not aware how many new bands there are, to be honest. I'm terrible at naming that sort of thing.
Yeah. Now that I mentioned, and I'm very close to in this interview too, now that I mentioned the 80s, for many years there has been a revival in different aspects, from bands adopting the 80s sound in different genres related to the rock and metal, including elements from 80s pop music. Some bands sound fresh, other bands like sounds like a copy paste for other bands. So also we can see that the bands are selling more vinyls nowadays, so which is weird. So considering that CDs, according to different sources, seems to be the best format, and ignoring that the most music that is in this whole business has been not recorded in analog way. So it all now is digital. So what do you think something like this happening? Do you think that the CD will experience something similar to vinyls these days in the future?
I find it weird with CDs because the industry has really tried to kill them off, but people still buy them and people still love CDs. And when you look at the sales figures, they always talk about vinyls going up and streaming's going up, but they never tell you, well, CDs are actually doing pretty well. And I think they dropped to about half of what they were in the 90s, but they're still selling really well. But the trouble is now you get a computer, it's got no CD player on it. You buy a car, it's got no CD player in it. It's like they're stopping you from using them. You know, there's the beauty and warmth of analog on vinyl. And I agree, even though it's made digital, when you put that on vinyl, you get something beautiful happens. It's just amazing. I find that all the time with Threshold and with my other bands. You think you know the music beautifully, you've made it in 24-bit in the studio, you're hearing perfect quality, and then you get the vinyl back and you put it on and it just sounds even better. You know, there's something magical there. But then after 10 listens, it starts crackling. So you know, for me, I prefer the CD. But I'm just baffled that with the technology we have and the you know, the advancement in knowledge we have, that now people just listen to MP3s. It's like, really, you got to be kidding me. You know, we were pursuing hi-fi excellence for so many decades, and then we stopped. You know, we should have a 24-bit CD that everybody has in their house now. That should be the new format. We shouldn't be listening to squashed up MP3s. I think it's ludicrous. But then I think, as I was saying earlier, you know, back then that was our hobby. You know, you spent that fortune on your hi-fi stack that was, you know, a meter tall, and you had speakers that were a meter tall, and it dominated your whole living room, and that was a big part of your life. And it's just not that way for kids now. So I guess the world just changes.
Yeah. Well, Richard, the sad times arrived at this interview. I hope you enjoyed this one like me doing this one, and you are a terrific guy. So congratulations for this Dividing Lights. It's a great word, as usually from Threshold. I listened all album a few days or a few weeks ago. So perhaps do you want to add something to your Latin American fans and Metalerium followers?
Yeah, just one word. Sorry. Sorry we haven't come and played in Peru yet, or anywhere in Latin America. We would love to. I hope it will happen one day. But until then, I hope you enjoy your album, and thank you very much for watching.